IB Nation Sports Talk. We're up and rolling. Welcome to a Thursday edition of the show. He's Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. You look a little bit frazzled today.
Yeah, long day at work.
That hair is something.
Yeah, golf this morning as well. So
Oh, that's right. It's the up at dawn, golf in the morning, then go to work kind of day, right?
yes,
All right. Well, you got some steps in then. Anyway, I assume.
it wasn't a great round though. So it is what it is.
All right. Well, we've got a lot that we're going to cover in today's show because it is we in, we out day. So we've got a lot of we in, we outs straight from the Champions Lounge, our premium board. It's the only place that you can submit a question for today's show. I might allow it an exception here in a little bit. It's a judgment call. But I do want to, before we really get going, we're going to talk about something else before we get to the we in, we outs. But I did want to put this one up here because Jesse, your loyals want to know. Salty says he wants more whiteboard. We need more whiteboard. We in or we out on that?
We are in.
Okay. I've heard this before. Thursday seems like a good opportunity for a whiteboard, the way we've got this set up now. If we're doing we in, we out going forward all the time, you just throw in a little bit of whiteboard to whet everybody's appetite at the start of the show. You keep everybody satisfied. What do you think?
Yeah, I guess the next step would be, why don't you start like a little Champions Lounge whiteboard and people can comment some stuff that they'd like to see maybe.
Oh, we're gonna do that, huh? We're not just gonna take requests and questions from the board for we in, we out. We're also gonna take requests for what Jesse's gonna whiteboard.
Correct.
I see.
It's what the people want. Yes, that is a good one. I could be.
We got we in, we out coming up in a few minutes. Of course, we got rapid fire like we always end things with. But before we get to any of that tonight, I've seen some stuff. There's a New York Giants Hard Knocks that was just announced, and we'll get into some specifics on that in rapid fire. But Notre Dame's own version of Hard Knocks is coming to Peacock this season, and we've known about it for a while. It was announced when they announced the extension of their NBC TV contract back in December. But, when exactly the show makes its debut, what the name is even going to be, we don't know any of that yet. But, what we do know is Notre Dame did a similar show 9 years ago during the 2015 season. You remember the Showtime series, A Season with Notre Dame Football. Did you get to see any of that? I think you were still in college at that point. Did you get to see any of that, A Season with Notre Dame Football?
I want to say no.
Okay.
Don't think so.
I think the big thing that I remember, that was the season Malik Zaire got hurt against Virginia. Deshaun Kaiser came in through the last second, winning or last minute, whatever, winning touchdown to Will Fuller. Brian Kelly consoling Malik Zaire after the game and all that kind of stuff, promising him on camera, that he's, going to be the guy when he comes back. And, that led to some of the stuff the next season. That was the most significant thing, I think, that came out of that particular show. I'm curious. It's not like the Hard Knocks concept is new. Like, it's literally been around for like 25 years or something like that now, the actual Hard Knocks show on HBO, and they've added different versions. They've done in-season versions the last few years. They're going to add an off-season version with the Giants. How interested are you, Jess, in whatever this show, the Notre Dame show, ends up being called? What's your interest in this particular series?
Yeah, I would be really interested because I think it would be cool to see. I'd be most interested to see because I want to see the reconstruction of this offense. And then the other side of me would like to see how Al Golden runs his defensive practices, what those components and parts look like. So I'd be very interested if this were.
Do you think you're going to get to see that much, detail in depth along those those lines, because one thing that these shows do is, other than show a few practice reps and whatever else, and, meeting rooms and those kind of things, you don't get a whole lot of like what's actually, being called and, like X and O type stuff out of it because they want to sort of, they want to keep that as secret as possible, right?
Yeah, but whatever their show, like everything is on film. So regardless of if they show it in the show or not, everything is on film. I can see if there's certain things you're working on, right? Like if the offense is developing maybe some new stuff for, whatever week they're in or game plan. But if we're talking like, Hard Knocks, that's a part of fall camp or something like that. Again, that's just like the basic install of Notre Dame's offense. Everyone's going to see that offense at some point, via game footage. So I do think that we would see a little bit, but obviously we not as much as what we would probably like type situation. And I guess to kind of go back to the original question, I have more interest in this than I do in the 2015 version for sure.
Okay, so that obviously 9 years later, you don't have an interest in the 2015 version. Are you just saying you're more interested now than you were 9 years ago?
Yeah, I'm saying that like of
Like
the
that
two,
particular team, you didn't have much interest in.
no, I don't think there is as much to potentially learn or there's just a lot of new fresh stuff going on.
There's
Denbrock
a lot of
offense.
storylines, like you said, and that's the thing that Hard Knocks does well. What they have done well over the years, it has morphed a little bit in the last few years. Like they really used to, like they would get like the undrafted free agent or the guy drafted in the 6th or 7th round, guys who were going to be on the bubble for training camp cuts and stuff like that, and follow that storyline throughout. They haven't done nearly as much of that the last couple of years, and I can't remember who the summer team was last year. The Dolphins were the in-season team. I can't remember. Was it the Jets? Yeah, it was the Jets. Like they didn't want, like Robert Saleh said, he didn't want them, the cameras doing that kind of stuff. He didn't want them to see, when they're having those conversations with guys on the bubble and making those cuts. He didn't think it was fair to them. But, obviously you're not going to see anything like that with a college show. It is going to be different though. They're going to censor virtually all the language out of there, and like not the same kind of stuff that you get on an HBO show with a pro NFL team. But the storylines, just Marcus Freeman going into his 3rd season, as you referenced, the 1st season of Mike Denbrock, Al Golden, being the defensive coordinator that he is, Riley Leonard, the transfer portal quarterback, 2nd straight transfer portal quarterback that Notre Dame has had. Like those are the main storylines at the top of the list, and then you've got subplots like depth chart battles, what's going on the offensive line, how good are the receivers going to be, and then some of the personalities and stuff like that. So there's a lot there. I am curious how they present it, because it is going to be in this package deal with NBC. There'll be a lot of Notre Dame touch on it, Notre Dame production. So I'm curious how much they show. Like I would like to see them do a lot of similar stuff to that video that they put out in the comeback over Duke. Like that's the kind of stuff that I would like to see. Like coaches talking on the headsets, and now you're also going to be talking to the quarterback through the headsets and all that kind of stuff, and and a player on the defense as well. Those are the kind of things, like those inside conversations that we're not going to get just by watching a game or watching practice. That kind of stuff, especially since they are going to be following them throughout the season, that kind of stuff really interests me.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a good point, like the development of the wide receiver room. That's basically a brand new room considering the coach and the personnel as well. Obviously, there's carryover players, but I think you get what I'm saying. But yeah, like the day-to-day logistics of practice or in-game moments, high stakes. How they come about making the decisions that they're making. So I just think it's something that's just like the cherry on top for like fans like us.
Herrick says he just believes this staff is working harder than they've ever worked on the details, maybe to be seen. This will show some people what goes on behind the scenes, the effort they are putting in. I think that's a good point because there are still, I think, maybe some people who question some of that kind of stuff. So you'll get to see some of that. And like Andrew says, he wants to see intensity in fall camp. Does this team have real championship aspirations? And, again, like just because you don't see Marcus Freeman doing his best Brian Kelly impersonation on the sideline does not mean they don't have intense practices, because they have a lot of intense practices and there are a lot of intense moments. And I think some of those candid moments in practice that most fans don't get to see, I think that would be good to show as well in a program like this. Some of those moments where Marcus Freeman, does maybe get a little bit more intense. How much value do you think a show like this brings to Notre Dame, just having their own show like this?
I don't see it as something that brings like a tremendous amount of value. I think that it's more or less the people that it's going to appeal to majority wise are people like you, me, and probably everyone else watching this show right now is what you would probably consider, super fans or people who want those extra details, right? Like, I don't think that like maybe someone who is a casual Notre Dame fan or, like on the fence, like, they root for Notre Dame, but they don't necessarily love Notre Dame. I don't think you're going to sway any of those sort of people. I think it's, again, more so, it's like giving dessert to us, the people who really, enjoy the inner workings of Notre Dame. I think that's who it has more value for.
I mean, you're playing to the Notre Dame fan base, obviously, but this is something that Notre Dame can say, look, in addition to having our own TV contract, this is obviously part of the contract, but that Notre Dame can say, look, we've also got our own weekly documentary behind the scenes series. And now, while there have been a few other programs who have done this, I think Navy did it the year after Notre Dame. I think Florida State has done it before as well. There have been a handful, and Texas, since they have the Longhorn Network, they have done some things down there as well. But this is going to be obviously streamed because it's Peacock, but it's going to be out there every week. So I think that there's, it's, one, Notre Dame can kind of, hang it over everybody, look what we've got. We've got our own thing, but it also can't backfire, because again, like, how much editorial control will Notre Dame have over the final content before it goes out? I've got to think that they're going to have a lot of input on that kind of stuff, just in terms of things that, like even, candid moments. I'm not even talking about anything drastically, bad or whatever, but just some candid moments that maybe they don't want out there. Anything that's going to keep them from making a splash on the, whatever headlines out there that gets aggregated from a show like this. One thing Herrick said, and I know someone, I think DK might have, kind of explained this. This is something that I was thinking about. He says he wants to see him on the recruiting trail interacting with the players and their parents. It would be awesome if they could do that, but unfortunately they can't, because you can't, until the player has signed his NLI, you can't show any of that, kind of stuff. You like the coach, the school, they can't officially basically confirm that they're even interacting with them until the national letter of intent has been signed. That would be awesome to see that kind of stuff. But the only kind of recruits that you would be able to show would be guys who have signed. And obviously, in terms of incoming guys, that doesn't happen until early December, so that would be very interesting, I think, if they could do. Now, you can show some of these coaches, especially since there are a couple of bye weeks during the season, a lot of the travels that they're doing over the course of the season, going out, hitting the recruiting trail, getting on those jets and flying out to different parts of the country and stuff like that. But you just can't actually show any recruits. But I think it would be awesome if they could. Unfortunately, they can't. Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right, Andrew, and that's my point. NBC is Notre Dame's partner. They're not going to embarrass Notre Dame. But again, there's a difference between embarrassing, but also still wanting to show real things that people want to see on camera, right? Like what Notre Dame doesn't want seen is going to be different at many points than what a TV network does or doesn't want seen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Okay, perfect. So, are there a couple of are there a couple of players maybe who you would most want them to focus on? I think Riley Leonard is a
Right.
natural one. Like, do you think that like I think you've probably got to follow that and even the quarterback room. Are there any other guys off the top of your head that jump out at you?
Um, I think Jaden Greathouse sticks out. I think
Good one.
Charles Jagasaw sticks out. And then if you went over to the defensive side of the ball, I'd like to see Howard Cross. I think I think Howard Cross is someone that like we not deserve, but it'd be cool to kind of see a little bit more of.
Right.
Xavier Watts would be up there for me.
See, like Watts came to mind because of his level of play, and I don't mean this as a shot at all, but Watts is a pretty reserved guy. Like I don't know what he's like when he's actually with his guys and doing his thing. You know what I mean? But like when he's out in front of the media and stuff like that, he's fairly reserved. So as good as he is, he definitely came to mind. But I do wonder like what that element will look like.
I think it would force him to be more open, though. That's the thing.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so.
I also think that you could do one like Drake Bowen / KVA, just so you can understand what they're going through as a young linebacker.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's a high stakes position. And I think if you followed them around, people would understand really how hard of a position it is to play in terms of just getting everyone set up, getting the right alignment calls, communicating to your defensive line, to your secondary, and then boom, the play happens and you have to read and react. So I think following around an inside linebacker would also be really enjoyable.
I'm sure for you that it would be like at the top of the list, right? Follow the inside
Well,
linebacker basically. Like I think Benjamin Morrison is another good one. One thing I would really like to see is just that you see in Hard Knocks, and again, it's not like they're giving away any trade secrets when they're in their position rooms, but just seeing the position coaches interact with the guys in their group in their rooms, like as they're going through films, or even before they actually go over the film, just sitting around talking about whatever it happens to be. They'll show a lot of candid conversations on the actual Hard Knocks. I think that is something that I'd like to see as well. Now, this goes back to what I was just talking about, like what you would show, what you wouldn't. And I couldn't think of a good example off the top of my head, but I think Andrew nailed it here. Would they show, and it's Peacock, remember. Now, obviously, Peacock is owned by NBC, but would they show the confusion of the 10 men on the field against Ohio State? No. Andrew says he bet they wouldn't. And this is a prime example of what I'm talking about, because that is a pivotal moment in a game. Like, how much detail would they go into in a situation like that? I mean, personally, I don't think you can leave that out, right? Like, if you're showing how a game unfolded every week, like, you've got to at least include some of that in what you're showing in the show. How much detail you get into on that, I don't know, but like, you've got to include that, right? Do you think they would?
No, I don't think they would. Because I think it would open up more questions for Marcus Freeman down the road, whether that's a press conference. You know what I mean? I think they're not really willing to open up that sort of stuff more so than, what's already seen.
I mean,
right?
easy way to handle it. You're showing the highlight clips just like you would, with play-by-play calls and all that kind of stuff. And, the fact that there are 10 men on the field, then boom, cut to the post-game press conference. You show where he's asked about it, what his response is to it, and leave it at that. I think that is like a very fair way to handle something like that. But again, to me, that's something that you have to include. It's obviously, it's not something that the coach or the players or anyone, wants to talk about, but it is a significant moment in arguably the most significant game of the season for Notre Dame. And like, that's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. Would they even go into that at all? I think that they would have to, but that's just the, sort of media journalist side in me. I think you've got to at least include that to some extent.
I think a really cool aspect would be like obviously after wins, it's everyone's having a good time, but I'd like to see kind of, post game while it's still raw, how some of those losses go over and what's being said, what's being communicated, how quickly are they moving on, how frustrated are they? Just you can go down the list. I want to see the team's natural kind of response to losses when it's so raw, but I don't anticipate a lot of losses this season, so I don't know what good that's going to do.
Yeah. I mean, you hope not. But again, that's something that you've got to deal with as the season goes on, right?
Yeah.
It was much better for Showtime to be there in 2015, even though there was a significant injury, than it would have been. Like, think if they were there in 2016, like when they were 4-8. Think about that. Like, no one wants that shown on TV, but fortunately,
No, they don't.
They weren't around. The cameras weren't around for that. So it's going to be really interesting. And like in terms of assistants, I think Dylan McCullough and Max Bulla are a couple guys that jump to the top of my list with the personalities that they have. Hopefully we're able to see a lot of the assistant coaching staff and, kind of how they go about their business on a daily basis, whether it's practice or, whatever they're doing. I hope. Is there anyone that you want to see from?
Yeah, I'd add Mike Brown, and I would add Gino Guidugli on that list as well.
I think that's a good one too.
I want to see what he's doing with these quarterbacks.
So Sean Stewart says, when is this supposed to happen? Again, we don't know exactly when it's going to debut, but based on what we were told when they announced it back in December, it's going to follow the team throughout the course of the football season. And it is supposed to be an ongoing thing, like season to season, not just this year, but going forward as well. So it's supposed to start at some point during the season. I would be in favor of seeing some stuff in training camp as well myself. But, again, that's me, but would love to see that. One question that I've got before we move on, Wade Garrett, I've just got to ask, is that your real name, or is this a little nod to Roadhouse? What exactly is Wade Garrett here? The question that he was asking doesn't matter, but when I saw him post a question earlier and his handle said Wade Garrett, the first thing I thought of was the Sam Elliott character from the original Roadhouse. I'm guessing that's a movie. Yes. Boom. Roadhouse. Guessing that's a movie you haven't seen, Jess.
Nope.
Roadhouse, mijo. Yeah. All right. Okay. So again, Hard Knocks coming at some point in this upcoming season, and we keep referring to it as Hard Knocks. It won't be called Hard Knocks because, HBO owns the rights to that name. Whatever this thing is going to be called that Notre Dame is doing, it's going to be on Peacock beginning with this upcoming football season. So I'm looking forward to it for sure. I am, again, curious what kind of content we actually get out of it. All right, subscribe, rate, review. Make sure you hit that like button. We do appreciate it. All our loyals out there. You want to do a little bit of we in, we out, Jess?
Let's do it. I enjoyed it so much last week. I couldn't wait for this week.
All right, these come straight from the Champions Lounge. And I've got to see, man, for some reason, it's like the print keeps getting smaller on this thing.
Maybe your eyes just keep getting worse.
I mean, it's something. I might have to scroll over here. Okay, first question from Domer Grizz. 2 cornerbacks will have interceptions against Texas A&M, but neither will be named Benjamin Morrison. We in, we out on that?
I'm going to have to go with we out. I think there's only going to be 1 interception. I think 2 interceptions is a lofty expectation. I think that the over-under would probably be set at 1.5, and I would take the under on that.
I would take the under as well. I would say I would give Christian Gray like the first one up there if it's not Benjamin Morrison, and Xavier Watts based on the fact that he led the nation with 7 interceptions last year. So if they're going to be 2, I would say a corner and Xavier Watts would be at the top of my list. So I've got to be out on the specific question because he said 2 cornerbacks. Kingston Viliamu Asa plays in 10 games but doesn't make any starts. From DJ, we in, we out on that.
I'm in on that. I don't think he makes any starts, but I don't think he will have a redshirt season. I think he will have enough appearances. I don't know. 10 is a very specific number. I think he plays in every game in some way. And again, I think that his red shirt will not be preserved. I think that he is going to have enough action, but none of it will be as a starter.
I'm in on this as well. Obviously, barring injury, I think that depending on what Jack Kaiser would decide to do when it comes to bowl game time, what kind of bowl game Notre Dame is playing in, that might be Henry, first opportunity for KVA to make a start this season. I mean, yeah, he's going to play on special teams, but that doesn't count as a start. The starts only count offense or defense. If you play on special teams, that is just you get an X by your name and you participated in the game. That doesn't count as a start one way or the other. So I'm in on this as well with KVA. I got disrupted there. My train of thought got disrupted by barking Henry there in the background. From With Your Chest, Notre Dame needs a fourth quarter comeback to win one of the games against a 2024 opponent not named Texas A&M, Louisville, or Florida State. We in, we out on that.
So that leaves Northern Illinois, Miami of Ohio, Purdue, Louisville, Stanford, Navy.
Louisville's not on the list. Louisville is not on the list. Louisville was included in his exception.
Virginia, Army,
USC.
I'm going to say we out because I feel like that's just where I'm leaning. I don't think any of those games should be relatively close come the fourth quarter, but that doesn't mean one of them might not be.
Remember, he's including he only named 3 teams: Texas A&M, Louisville, Florida State. That means USC at USC is on the list of one of these teams they would potentially
but
need
USC
to come
is
back
not going to
against.
be that good this season.
Shouldn't be, but it's at USC. Games tend to be tighter out there when Notre Dame plays out there, even when Notre Dame is the better team.
I don't see it. I'm going to have to say we out.
I'm going to go in on this one because I do think that Steve Angeli is going to have to make either a spot start or come in at some point. I mean, based on recent history, like they were very fortunate last year that Sam Hartman got through the entire season without any injury problems. The only time we saw Steve Angeli, and to a lesser extent, obviously Kenny Menchie, was in those blowout game situations. But I'm going to assume that Steve Angeli has to make a spot start someplace, and maybe that's where this happens against, whether it's USC or somebody mentioned Georgia Tech as a potential trap type game. So I'm going to go in. I'm going to say it happens. Now, remember, like we're just saying fourth quarter comeback. So they could be down by a field goal going into the fourth quarter. You still have to come back. So too bad Parker couldn't have missed a game. What's that?
Jared Parker.
Oh, last year. Gotcha. That flew right over my head. Yeah. Hartman didn't miss a game. Too bad Parker couldn't have missed a game. Boy, here's a loaded one. Al Washington, we in or are we out from Irish Gordian knot?
See, I feel like you know a little bit more about this one than I do. I'm going to say right now we are in. However, I do feel like this season is his biggest season yet. I think he has the most to prove this season, or the most to show. Has the defensive line been as good as it was under Mike Elko? No, but there's a reason why he got poached to go coach on a team that won a national championship, right? Like Mike Elko was a very good defensive line coach, so I think naturally you're going to see some sort of regression. I like what Al Washington has done in the transfer portal. I like what Al Washington has done recruiting wise. I just need to see a little bit more development on the field, but I think that is what these next couple seasons are going to be about for him, because there's, like, he's basically playing guys that he's inherited. He's not
Well,
they
see,
haven't
I
gotten
think
to the part of the cycle where it's purely guys that he has recruited to come in and play.
the development part is fine, especially when you look at last year and the fact they brought in Javonte Jean-Baptiste, who was just a role player at Ohio State, never did anything, and Javonte ended up getting drafted this year. He wouldn't have been drafted if he had stayed at Ohio State. And like you look at a guy like Howard Cross, Riley Mills, all those guys. I think the development part is there, but he does need to get bigger hits in his recruiting. That is an area that's got to pick up. Ant VR says I'm not crediting him with JJB or Cross, but
How can't
look,
you though? He got him in the portal, and JGB was a way better defensive end than he was at Ohio State.
He's been with Cross for 2 years now. Like, if you want to say Elston is the better defensive line coach, that's fine. But Cross's play was the best of his career last year, a year removed, 2 seasons removed basically from having Elston coach him. So, I don't think that you can use Cross against him, and you can't use JJB against him either, because again, Jean-Baptiste did nothing at Ohio State. He had a career year in his 1 year with Al Washington at Notre Dame. So, I mean, you can not like Al Washington or whatever. You don't have to be in on him. I am at least not hesitantly, but, at least I am more in than out on Al Washington, but do need to see more from him from a recruiting standpoint. And this one as well, Andrew Gilmore says, I'm out, never should have lost Elston. Well, the problem with that is Mike Elston went as far as he could at Notre Dame, and he had a chance to go back to his alma mater. He left, obviously, after getting passed over for being a defensive coordinator again, and went back to Michigan with, at least some hope, some possibility that he might have ended up being a coordinator there. And then ultimately, when Jim Harbaugh went to the NFL, Mike Elston went with him. So I just think he maxed out what he was going to be able to do here at Notre Dame, because he was never going to move past being a position coach, and some of those other titles that came along with it. And, case in point, they went out and hired Al Golden as the defensive coordinator. So, Mike Elston, really good defensive line coach, but he went as far as he was going to be able to go here under the Golden Dome. Another one from Irish Gordian Nut. The base price of the new NCAA football game is $150. He says, I'm guessing this is to offset NIL pay to players. We in or we out on that?
Wow. I did not know the new game was $150. We are out on that. I not only would I have to buy a gaming system that would cost me, $400 minimum. On top of that, I got to buy a game that costs $150. So we're talking about potentially a $500 to $600 investment just to play one video game. I am very much out on this one.
Yeah, I think I'm out as well. They're basically paying the players. I think it's like $600 or not a season. $600. I guess it is for the season. They get $600 for being in the game, and they get a copy of the game. So, I mean, when you add that up across the FBS for whoever has opted in, that's going to cost you a little bit of money. But inflation, man, I just think that that's the biggest thing. Everything costs more right now, and this game hasn't been out there for a while, and they want to hit it big. So I'm out on that one as well. Tommy, I'm giving Tommy an exemption because he is a member of the Champions Lounge, but he's driving and he didn't get to get this one in on the lounge. Friday, July 19th is going to be the release date of College Football 25. That he says, we in or we out on the Friday Fire Show being postponed that day due to the game dropping.
Again, I don't think I'm going to buy it. I just don't have a gaming system. And there is a little bit of clarification here. The 150 gets you Madden and college football.
Oh,
so it's
okay.
a package deal. That does change my answer slightly, but it still doesn't, it doesn't address the fact that I don't have a gaming system. So
not bad. Not bad. In or out, a 5 seed will never make the college football playoff championship game with the top 4 teams getting buys. This is from 3rd and 7 Duo. He says wins would be over the 12, 4, and the 1 and play the 2 seed in the championship. So the question, a 5 seed will never make the college football playoff championship game. You in or you out on that?
I'm out. I think at some point, someone outside of the top 4 is going to have to make it. I don't know how long it's going to take, and I don't know if there's going to be potential expansion even further. But I just think that I'd say that I'll even go so far to say within 5 years there'll be a 5 seed or higher who at least makes the championship game.
I think Vince and I had a similar question in the mailbag yesterday. I'm completely out on this because I think we even said within the first 3 years that we thought it would happen. And this is why you expand the playoff to, you obviously hope to have this kind of thing, and where the 5 or the 6 or whatever seed it happens to be. Like if you look at last year, the scenario that he's talking about here, Alabama was the 4 seed. So if you win that first game, you would have played Alabama last year. Not the greatest year for Alabama, but that was the 4 seed, and Michigan was the number 1 seed. Washington and Texas, the 2 and 3 on the other side of the bracket. And so you would have played one of them in the national championship game. And it just, I think that upsets are going to happen. We're just not used to seeing them yet because it is so consolidated. You're like, one of those, like the 3 and the 4, especially, there's a very good chance, like if upsets happen in the conference championship games, then, that's who ends up being the 3 or the 4 seed, more specifically the 4 seed in this scenario that we're talking about. So because if you win your conference championship, you get the automatic bid, as the 4 highest ranked conference champions. So there's a chance that might not even be, a very good chance that might not even be a truly top 4 type team that you end up going against. So I think, I'm out on this. I think that there will be upsets. I think this is someone who's obviously a Notre Dame fan. You look at his photo there, he's got the Golden Dome in there. This is someone, who has obviously spent a lot of time thinking about Notre Dame's never going to get a bye because, we can never get a bye in this playoff, and thinking that automatically works against you. If they're good enough, they'll win those games. And, I think that there are other teams who will win those games as well. I'm not just going to write them off because they don't get a first round bye. From Joe Allen 72, Notre Dame makes it to the playoffs and wins 2 games. Notre Dame will offer a contract extension to Marcus Freeman. We in or we out on that?
This is this season.
I believe that's I believe that's the scenario that he didn't specify this season. But so if they win, I don't know if it's just like if, or he's saying they will. Let's just go if they win 2 games. Do you think they give Marcus Freeman a playoff or a contract extension? In or out on that?
I would have to say in.
Okay.
And the reason why is because I think Marcus Freeman has shown all of the developmental steps that you would like to see outside of basically, winning, making it to the playoff, winning a playoff game, or winning it all. I think that's kind of, he's doing great in recruiting. He's doing great in player development. He's doing great in getting a staff that he wants. Like, you can go down the list, right? But I think the only thing left on his checklist is winning the big games. And so I do believe that if he does that, he will most definitely get a contract extension.
There's been some response in the boards on this. I think if he makes it to the playoff, he's getting an extension because he'll be at the end of year 3, and just the way everything is trending, it's one of those, you lock him up and sends a message to all the recruits and to everybody else out there that things are going the way we want. I think that they will, just for making the playoff, even though it's obviously easier to make the playoff this year. They win 2 games. I think they even win 1 game. It's a lock that he gets it. So like if I was doing scale out of 1 to 10 on each of these, making the playoff, my confidence is a 7 that they would sign him to a contract extension. If they win 1 playoff game, I would bump it up to a 9. If they win 2, it's a virtual lock at a 10. That's how I would rate it. From 13 Reasons Why, Gerby Lambert, incoming freshman offensive lineman, will insert himself into the starting lineup during the 24 season. We in or we out on that? Competing for the right tackle spot when he gets here this summer with Tosh Baker and Emil Wagner.
See, this is tough because I think you have to include the totality of the season, bowl game included. Like, do we get another Charles Jagasaw situation where he makes his debut in the bowl game? I think that's got to be on the table. So I think this is a lot closer than expected. But I'm just going to go without. I think it's hard to be a true freshman starting in the offensive line because you got to have the body frame, the muscle, the mass to do it. And then also I just think that I just don't see him overtaking a more experienced player year 1 combined with kind of the other stuff that I was just talking about. So I'm going to go with we out. This isn't high school anymore.
No, but I mean the guy is the guy is over 300 pounds coming in out of high school. And, Blake Fisher came in and started right away. Joe Alt, it took him a little bit more time, but he found his way into the starting lineup at some point. I'm not definite, like this isn't buy, sell, hold, like let's wait and see. We've got to be either in or out on this. So I've got to go out for right now. I do want to at least see what he looks like in training camp before I answer that right now. I think I don't think that's a cop-out. I think that's the best way that I can put it. I do want to see, because like you said, this isn't high school anymore. Could he come in and compete for that right away? Sure. But I at least want to see him going up against some other college men before I commit to that right now. I think he's got a chance. But, like as good as Charles Jagasaw is, who you mentioned, it took him until an All-American first-round draft pick left before he had the opportunity to get in the lineup. And there's nobody from this team that's going to be leaving to give some of those opportunities. This is an interesting one here from CR Lewis 80. With the new early signing day being moved, he says potentially moved to June. It is going to be moved to June starting next year. The early signing period is going to be in June next year. He says there will be high school players who opt out of their senior year, i.e. running backs, due to shelf life. We in or we out on that?
It's almost like opting out for a bowl game, right? Because you believe that you want to save yourself for that next level.
Right.
I'm going to say
now you're not signing in December. You're signing in June before the season ever starts.
I'm going to say we out. I think the only way that you see someone opt out is if somehow they can be an early enrollee and completely forego their entire, senior season. But I don't think that anyone is going to opt out of playing football. No. So I'm going to say we out.
I'm going to go we in on this. I think that we will at some point, because I think that the notion, as we talked about, with some of the guys who opted out for Notre Dame just last December out of the Sun Bowl, who were 5th, 6th, 7th round draft picks, those kind of guys opting out of bowls, it's basically become a status thing. And I think that a lot of these high school guys are going to catch that status fever, and all it's going to take is one guy to do it. And the next thing you know, You're going to see signees all over the country starting to do it who, have maybe the slightest little thing go wrong. And it's like, why do I want to, especially if they don't play for good teams in high school, if they're on a team that's like a 500 team or whatever, I think you're going to see some of this happening. That's just kind of the way things are trending in sports right now. Again, it's all copycat stuff. And I think all it's going to take is one, and then you're going to see more and more guys doing it. So I'm going in on this. I think it's going to happen. All right. We had someone asking, it is DMND 13. Jesse's Father's Day gift to Sean next month will cost at least $100. We in or we out on that?
We in on that. $100 is usually what I shoot for, between 100 and 200.
I don't know. Like, are you that high? I don't remember. Like,
okay.
I don't remember any Father's Day gifts coming in with that kind of price tag.
Okay, now you're just lying to everyone. Got me
all right. I'm hesitantly in on this. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Can we zoom in on your headphones? I think that's what I got last year.
Is this what you got me last year for Father's Day?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. I forgot that was a Father's Day.
For your birthday, I got you a nice pair of shoes. Those were over $100.
True, but that's not Father's Day.
I know for certain last year I got you those headphones, Sony headphones, and they were more than $100.
All right. That's fair.
Man.
Everyone knows I'm joking, right? Okay. From Connor Laws, Joe Alt will be the next rookie all-pro offensive lineman out of Notre Dame. So he has to be a rookie all-pro because this is his rookie year. So rookie all-pro. Is Joe Alt an all-pro this upcoming season? For reference, just so you know, Trent Williams from San Francisco was the first team all-pro last season at left tackle. Penei Sewell from Detroit was the right tackle. Those were the two first team all-pros, and we don't know exactly which side Joe Alt is going to play on just yet. I've got to go out on this because I don't think that he's going to jump in and be a rookie first team all-pro. As good as I think that he is going to be, I don't think he's going to attain that right away because there are a lot of good tackles in the league right now.
I'm going to have to go with we out just because of probability. It is a mountain to climb to ask for that kind of production your first year. And also you got to look at, who's in that division. You have the Raiders, the Chiefs, and the Broncos. You at least get Max Crosby twice per season. That's a tough outing. I don't see it. I still think he's going to have a really good rookie season. I just don't think he's going to be one of the top tackles.
Right. I think Andrew said it best. Pro bowler, but all pro means you're the number one.
And that's kind of where I was getting at.
It's like all pro is basically like first team all conference or first team all American. Like he's going to be good. He might be second team. He might be third team, whatever it is. Good chance that he'll end up in the Pro Bowl, but I think that the odds are against him to be first team all pro this year. So I've got to be out on this.
People
as well.
echoing what I said. It's going to be hard to contain Max Crosby twice in one season. I think he's got his work cut out for him.
They do have second team all pro. Ant was asking, don't they? Oh, sorry, I pressed the wrong one here.
That was going to be my next thing too. I wouldn't be surprised if he made like a third team all pro.
Yeah.
I think that's more like.
I don't know if they have third team all pro. I know they have second team all pro though. So I think it's first team, second team, and then just basically you're a Pro Bowler after that.
Texas Chris wants to know, Elko was poached to a team that won a national championship? Yes, Michigan.
No, Elston, I think is. We were talking about Mike Elston.
I think I might have mispronounced, or I think I might have called Elston Elko.
Okay.
So that's my apologies. I definitely meant Elston. So good thing that was brought up.
Right. Lou Holtz, Thunder and Bolts, similar to what we were talking about before. Marcus Freeman will sign a contract extension before the 2025 season. We in or we out on that?
We in, because Notre Dame's making the playoffs, and that's going to get him some money.
I agree as well. I think that we will see a contract extension for Marcus Freeman, obviously assuming things go the way that we think that they are going to go, and we all think that they are going to go the way we think they're going to go, right?
Right.
From a few of these, by the way, I'm gonna save for rapid fire. I think either today or tomorrow, as we kind of continue to roll through some of these. From Golden Domer 59, a player other than Xavier Watts, Jack Kaiser, or Howard Cross will lead the team in tackles for the 2024 season. We in or we out on that?
We are in, and it'll be Drake Bowen.
That's where I'm going as well. I am completely same answer. I think Bowen, middle linebacker, that's who's going to do it. Kaiser was the third leading tackler last season. Watts was a little bit farther down the line. I think he was fourth or fifth last season. So I'm going to say it is going to be the middle linebacker. J.D. Bertrand was the leading tackler last year. Yeah, Cross was number 2. Kaiser was number 3. Watts was number 4 last year. So I'm in on this. I agree. From MCP 717, Notre Dame will be a better team and have a better record at the end of the season in comparison to Texas A&M. This is an easy.
That's an easy
in for me. In for me. Now, Texas A&M's schedule is not that difficult. Like they play a couple of FCS teams. They play McNeese. They play, who else do they play? I'm trying to think of it here. They play Bowling. I guess Bowling Green is obviously not an FCS team, but they play McNeese. They play Bowling Green. They play New Mexico State as well. Their 4 most difficult games after Notre Dame: at Florida, they play Missouri, they play Auburn, they play Texas. So I don't think they'll have as good a record as Notre Dame, but I think they'll still end up with a solid record by the time it's all said and done. They won 7 games last year as it was after firing Jimbo.
Let me ask you something.
Okay.
Are we in or we out on Mike Elko having a better first year at Texas A&M than Duke? At Duke, he was 9-4, finished second in the ACC, and got ACC Coach of the Year.
Well, again, it's not an overly difficult schedule that he has, but I think that they'll lose at least 3 games during the regular season, if not 4. So you said he would have a better first year than his first year at Duke. I'm going to be out on that.
I do. I'm going to take out as well. I think that the ACC was top heavy. I just think that the distribution of talent is more spread throughout the SEC.
This one from DK, the 2024 football team will have more wins than the 23-24 men's basketball team. They had 13 wins this season, the Notre Dame men's basketball team.
Oh, we're out. We out. Men's basketball team will be borderline a 20-win team next season.
Nobody's saying. You got to look at the question here, Jess. The 24 football team. Well, you're not reading it right because the number is 13. The number to be, in other words, will the upcoming football team have more than 13 wins?
Right. I said no because I think the basketball team is going to get about 20 wins.
Again, you're not seeing the question right. It is not how many wins will the basketball team have next season. They had 13 this past season. That's the number to beat.
Right. So if I'm saying 20, I think it's obvious that the football team can't win 20 games.
Okay. You're still not getting it.
Okay.
We're not asking if the men's basketball team is going to be better next season. We're talking about, will next year's football team have more wins than this past season's basketball team just had?
No.
Okay. I agree. But 20 is still not the number to beat. Okay, from G. Perez, even though Steve Angeli is listed as the backup, Kenny Minchie and CJ Carr will combine for more total mop-up duty time. We in or we out on that?
We out on that. It's all the mop-up duty will always go to the second string quarterback. So if Angeli's the second string quarterback, he's going to see more mop-up time than Minchie and Carr.
So you think Angeli still has more mop-up time than Angeli and Carr? I do too. I think it'll look similar to last year, quite honestly. I think that's what it's going to, the question will be, does CJ Carr get any mop-up time out of the whole thing? Minchie didn't get much last year, and I think that it's going to end up being Steve Angeli who comes in and gets all those mop-up reps, the vast majority of the mop-up reps, just like last season. So I've got to be out on this as well. All right. So we've got there's a few questions left, but we've got a lot that I want to get to in rapid fire here still tonight. So what I'm going to do is save the rest of the questions and any lingering questions that come in, and we will work them into tomorrow's rapid fire show. But in the meantime, Jess, are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's do it.
Okay. So, fill in the blank. Notre Dame men's basketball getting a commitment today from Lehigh forward Burke Chebuhar is blank.
Is a great depth piece to the roster. Again, I don't see this as, someone who's going to come in and be an impact player playing, 30 minutes a game, giving you 10 points a game, that sort of stuff. I think more importantly, what's going on that Micah Shrewsbury is doing is he's just building depth outside of his starters, and he's getting guys that I think are going to play a certain brand of basketball. Because, in the 32 games that he played last season, he started 22, averaged 7.5 points and 5 rebounds. And again, that is at Lehigh. You would anticipate, the competition to be better. I just think he's a really, really quality player coming off the bench. I don't think he's got starter minutes in him. He doesn't have a starter impact in him, but I think he's going to do enough, play the way Micah Shrewsbury wants him to play, and he's going to fit into the system very nicely.
And that's the most important thing. We found that out last year. Play the way Micah Shrewsbury wants him to play and fit into the system. He's 6'8", so he's not a giant, but he gives him some nice size to go along with Konstantinovsky, the 6'10" guy that they added earlier this week, that they got a commitment from earlier this week. What's interesting about this guy, Burke Chebuhar, he started his career at a Division III school, transferred to Lehigh, and was a walk-on in his entire time at Lehigh. Played 11 games in each of his first 2 seasons, kind of like mop-up, walk-on type minutes. And then this year, comes off the bench in the first 10 games, becomes a starter down the stretch, and, starts hitting double figures. And, he scored in double figures. I think it was like 10 times, like 7 out of the last 10 games he hit double figures. He was 20-plus points 3 times. So I don't expect him to come in and light it up in the ACC this season. But like you said, he's going to play the way Micah Shrewsbury wants, and he's going to be a nice piece to the program that Shrewsbury continues to build here at Notre Dame. And they now have added 3 guys via the transfer portal. Matt Aloko, Nikita Konstantinovsky, the big man earlier this week from Monmouth and Tulsa before that, and now this guy Chebuhar as well. So they continue to add via the portal. So again, we did a lot of the we in, we out questions in the main segment of the show today, and the only way that you can give us those we in, we out questions is by going to the Champions board and posting them there. But there were actually a few that came in late last week, well after we had done the show, that people continued to add to the board that I wanted to bring into this show here today. So Marcus Freeman wins a national championship before Ryan Day. In or out on that one, Jess?
I'm just going to say we out. And I don't think this is a knock on Marcus Freeman or Ryan Day. I just think Ryan Day is a little bit further along in the process. So for that reason, I just think that, again, playing probabilities, Ryan Day would have a higher chance at it happening first. Now that I don't know what Michigan is going to look like now that Harbaugh is gone, I think that definitely helps someone like Ryan Day. And I just think that their path to the national championship is a little bit easier too, because the best Notre Dame can do is a 5. Ohio State could potentially be the number 1 seed in the entire thing, get a bye, all of the above. So I just have to say, again, looking at probabilities and the path to get there, I think that Ryan Day has a slight advantage.
I'm going to go in on this one. I think that Marcus Freeman will get there first. And like Andrew has been on point with most of his points here tonight. Day has a quarterback problem, could be staring down 2 regular season losses. I mean, they did go out. They had to go to the transfer portal, get the Kansas State quarterback this year. A lot of people think that he's going to be, he's like the best quarterback transfer in the country. Okay, let's see. But it's not going to be any easier now after they after they packed all these teams into the Big Ten. Like you said, okay, is Michigan going to be down? Probably. Penn State is still going to be there. And now you're also adding Washington, Oregon, and USC to the mix. And so it's not going to be, it is a harder path now for Ohio State than what it used to be to get to the playoff. Now, should they make it as an at-large in most seasons, even if they don't win the conference? Yes, with a 12-team playoff format, but it's not getting any easier for Ryan Day, and he hasn't won a championship by himself. Their last championship was obviously when Urban Meyer was there, and in the meantime, the arc is going in the right direction for Marcus Freeman and for Notre Dame. He has improved Notre Dame's quarterback recruiting, whereas Ryan Day is having a harder time with the quarterback recruiting there. He lost Tony Alford, a great recruiter himself and a great position coach himself, to Michigan. So I'm going to go in. I'm going to say, yes, Marcus Freeman will win a championship before Ryan Day. Like you said, are the odds in Ryan Day's favor? Yeah, just because a couple of other coaches have won national championships since Notre Dame has won its last, but I think that Marcus Freeman gets there first. Next question. The Notre Dame offense is so explosive, they'll have 2 legitimate candidates for a Heisman Trophy this year. In or out on that?
So legitimate candidates to me would be top 5, and it's probably going to be a quarterback and wide receiver duo. And that probably means you're the best team in the country. You're making a run at the whole thing as well. So I'm going to say we out because I think 1 is my legitimate answer.
Same. We out on this. I think Riley Leonard will be. I think that he'll be in the conversation much later than Sam Hartman was in the conversation last year. But I think that it is just too hard, especially considering, again, like if you look at track record, past history, and all that different stuff, it has been very far and few, between that Notre Dame has been able to have legitimate Heisman Trophy contenders. So I think they'll have 1 in the quarterback, but I've got to be out on having 2. Again, Brett, this is rapid fire, but we're using some we in, we out questions that came in late last week as some of these topics so that we can get them in here tonight. The Notre Dame defense is rated top 5 or better by the end of the year in all categories, and one of their elite linebackers wins the Butkus Award this year. In or out on that one?
That is a very loaded question. I feel like it should be 2 questions instead of 1 because you're basically saying, are they going to be top 5 and blah, 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 and have someone win the Butkus? I'm out on both. I don't think that they have – they're going to be top 5 in majority categories. I don't think that they will be, top 5 in every single one. I think the one that's most important is team defense. I think there will be a top 5 team defense. I don't think they're going to be a top 5 run defense. And I just don't think that they're too young for a Butkus, in my opinion.
I agree. I think that they're like another year away from potentially having that. Maybe Drake Bowen or KVA next year is in that conversation, but I don't think that it happens this year. JOK was obviously their last Butkus Award winner. And even like he says, the defense will be rated in the top 5 or better by the end of the year in all categories. I mean, that's
a lot.
There are a lot of categories out there. So I've got to be out on that as well. I think they're going to be really good, but I don't think they hit either one of those marks this year. Irish fans will swear less during the live game message boards this year. In or out on that?
I'm going to say in, because I think the team is going to be better this season. And naturally, when you are better, you are in a better spirit and less cussing happens. So as long as they keep winning, which I anticipate this season and going to the playoff, then I don't see any reason. So I'm going to go with we in.
Yeah, I'm in on it as well based on that rationale. I think it's going to be a lot better season. The question is, I'm not watching the boards when stuff goes wrong, because I do watch Twitter in a lot of those cases, and a lot of people overreact early. If Notre Dame is not blowing out a team that they are supposed to, quote unquote, supposed to blow out in the first quarter or the second quarter, a lot of people get bent out of shape, early on, and so they still go nuts. So I think in general there'll be less because Notre Dame should handle this schedule for the most part, but you still never know. Like if you're prone to that stuff, you're still going to do it, right? I know it was, like halfway joking or whatever. Another question about Iowa women's basketball that came in today. I figured that I would just save it for here. Lisa Bluter, their head coach, retired earlier this week. Do you think that as a result, they will not get past the first round of the NCAA tournament next season? Not just Lisa Bluter, but obviously Caitlin Clark being gone as well. Those two things contributing. What do you think about that?
I'm just going to say we in on that. I think losing both of those, a good coach and obviously one of the best women's college basketball players of all time, I think it is, and just the emotional turmoil, right? Like the emotional roller coaster being at the very, very highs. And now it probably seems like you're crashing down and completely in a valley, right? So I just think this is a big transition year for Iowa, so I don't see them getting past the first round.
Yeah, I'm definitely in on this as well. And when you look at it made total sense to me that Lisa Bluter would decide to retire after Caitlin Clark left. And she was there for 25 years, made it past the first round 10 times before getting to the championship the last 2 years. She had been to a handful of Sweet 16s, one Elite 8 a few years back, but for the most part, it was either first round, second round, and now you're without Caitlin Clark. Your head coach retires. They did promote an assistant, so you have no idea how exactly she will do, but I would not anticipate them making any kind of deep run in the NCAA tournament. So I do believe that they will probably be out after the first round next year in the first season post Bluter, and of course, most importantly, Caitlin Clark. The one thing I am interested in seeing is if this, there were already stories before the Indiana Fever and Caitlin Clark's season opener a couple of nights ago that the head coach down there was already trying to change Caitlin Clark and do all this, it's like you need to do this. And, if they have they've had the first pick in the WNBA draft the last 2 years with Clark and then Boston last year. I would not be surprised if Lisa Bluter is basically kind of sits out a college basketball season this year, but maybe she ends up as head coach of the Indiana Fever a year from now. That would not shock me.
That's some good speculation there.
Yeah. So speaking of college basketball coaches, Wisconsin Green Bay has hired longtime radio host and former Notre Dame and Oklahoma State basketball player Doug Gottlieb to be its new men's basketball coach, with a catch. Gottlieb is going to continue to host his nationally syndicated radio show for Fox Sports while also coaching the Phoenix. Jesse, what could go wrong with this?
I think there is a mirage of things that could go wrong. But I want to believe that Doug Gottlieb is past that point in his life and career, right? And I think that the only thing that I could see as a potential, big thing that could go wrong is he just slips up on his show and says something that he's ultimately, not supposed to, or gives maybe too much information about something going on with the team. Like the boundary of coach and speculating and talking about things as still like a radio host. That's the only thing that I could see potentially going wrong. But that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work to be a full-time coach and be a radio personality.
And it's a 2-hour radio show every day, middle of the afternoon. I know he was on the Dan Patrick show the other day saying, hey, I'm the head coach. I set the schedule. Okay, well, there are a million other things that you're supposed to be doing as the head coach, especially a first-time head coach of a basketball program, like recruiting. And even when you're not out recruiting, you need to be directing your recruiting efforts. You need to be out pounding the pavement, seeing players, all these different things. And then obviously once you get into the season, you're taking 2 hours every day where you're on the air. But as we know, there's more than just the 2 hours you're on the air that go into it. There's prepping and, getting ready. And then you're going to go on the air and host a radio show while you're in the middle of the season on game days. And I just, and then even beyond that, the thing, once he goes on the air, Doug Gottlieb is a very opinionated person. So what is he going to have opinions about players and teams and coaches that he's playing against?
That's where I said it would get a lot of dicey.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is just a time bomb waiting to happen. Doug Gottlieb thinks he can pull it off. I'm shocked that an AD would approve something like this, but he went with a celebrity, basically. Yeah, you put that up there. He said probably because Gottlieb doesn't want to take a pay cut to coach. I mean, that's part of it as well. That will kind of offset some of that. So it'll be interesting to watch, but I'm just waiting for it to blow up. He's wanted to be a head coach. He interviewed for the same job a year ago, and the guy who was there just took the Wyoming job, and so they hired Gottlieb. So I don't know. Well, to me, it's just a huge time commitment when you're a first-time head coach trying to run a program like that. I know Doug Gottlieb has a huge ego, and he thinks that he can pull something like this off. I think it's going to be very difficult, though.
God's speed, brother.
So we talked about Notre Dame's Hard Knocks type show earlier. The New York Giants are going to be on HBO's Hard Knocks series for the first time this summer, and it's also going to be a little bit different. It's going to be the first off-season edition of the show. Hard Knocks off-season with the New York Giants. It's going to premiere July 2nd as well. Do you buy or sell New York Giants off-season Hard Knocks?
I buy off-season Hard Knocks. I sell the fact that it has to be the Giants. I think it's a cool idea. I mean, it's more insight on like OTAs, rookie camp, all of that stuff before you essentially get to preseason and when the, next Hard Knocks would kick in. I mean, I have to give credit to Hard Knocks, though. Like, they are doing a great job of really stretching this thing out. First, it was just, the beginning of this training camp. Now we have an in-season. Now we have a preseason. I think they're just getting a lot of feedback that people are going to eat this stuff up, no matter what it is. And so if you can give us insight to 3 different teams at 3 different stages of the season, it's a great idea. Again, I hate that it has to be the Giants.
We get to a couple of comments here in just a minute. So I'm going to buy it kind of because of what you're talking, I'm curious to see what they do with this off-season edition. The fact that they're debuting it on July 2nd, you do kind of question that, right around the 4th of July and all that kind of stuff, but it'll lead up to training camp. And then I assume they haven't announced who the training camp edition is going to be yet, but it's more football content. So I'll take it. I'll see what it's all about this first time, like if they're showing, OTAs and rookie minicamp and all that kind of stuff, kind of coming in. And obviously you're going to get to see even more behind the scenes stuff since there won't be an actual training camp going on at the actual time they're airing this stuff. So I'll buy it for now just to kind of see what it's all about, because I do enjoy the other Hard Knocks series, both training camp and in season. I thought last year when they went to Miami, it was the best in-season edition that they've done so far with Mike McDaniel and all that stuff down there. But so I'll be curious to see it. I'll go in on it. Like even though Tommy said F the Giants, okay, like I'll still see what it's all about. DK, thanks for the super chat. He says, although I disagree with everything Jesse said tonight, I still support the Steyers, even though Sean didn't expose Jesse to Roadhouse. Thank you very much. Wade Garrett, it sounds like a new movie that we've got to get Jesse to see. I heard the remake stinks, but the original, classic. By the way, when Jesse came to town last week for Mother's Day weekend, we did do the Top Gun back-to-back, Top Gun and Top Gun Maverick. Vince is going to be with us on tomorrow's show, so we're going to get to some of that on tomorrow's show. Herrick says, Jesse, please crack a Pabst Blue Ribbon. You're so in that character mode today. I think they're enjoying all your eccentricities with your hair and your headsets and, your shirt unbuttoned down to the button, at the top, and everything else that you got going.
Listen, it's been a long day, okay?
Uh-huh.
Golfed, worked, and then my favorite, well, not favorite, but like my boss. Today was his last day, so there's going to be a lot of transition within the company that I'm not super excited about. But we forge on. Speaking
of DK, he is accusing you of acting like you attempt to pick up the tab when you go out to eat with your mom and I. How do you respond to that?
I pick it up when the occasion calls, but I'm not pump faking or anything. I'm not going to go for the tab and then not pay for it. But when the occasion calls, I do pay. But, nice part about going home is that's what you got parents for. They pick up the tab every now and then.
Can still do that when you're in your 20s. Andrew, going back to Gottlieb, asking what his credentials are. He says it's insulting to coaches. JJ Redick's going to get the Lakers job too. And that's kind of the same but different. He co-hosts that.
At least JJ Redick played LeBron in the NBA for 14 years.
Right. But you're going to make JJ Redick the head coach of one of the most iconic franchises in all of sports, let alone the NBA, because he's podcast buddies with LeBron James. That, again, without any coaching experience, that seems a little odd. And I think that the LA media and the media at large is going to have a problem, even though hosting a podcast is much less time consuming than a daily 2-hour radio show. I think people are going to have a much bigger problem with JJ Redick if he continues to do a podcast once he becomes head coach of the Lakers, assuming he does become head coach of the Lakers.
I think there's still a lot up in the air around this whole Lakers situation. If LeBron stays in LA, I think there's a good chance he becomes the coach. But I think you got to see where Bronny gets drafted in a few weeks, because I think that's ultimately going to be a big kind of sway for LeBron.
Whoever drafting him, that's where LeBron's going to play next year, right?
He has made it very obvious that he wants to play at least one season with his
it's
son.
Literally the only reason anyone has interest in Bronny being a draft entrant. That's it. Right?
He had a nice game the other day. I think they did at the combine, they did a scrimmage. He was 4 of 10 shooting, and had 15 points in about 20 minutes. So it's, it's not like he's a dud, but obviously he's going to get more recognition, more praise, more, overhype for a guy that really isn't ready to be in the NBA yet.
So we have even more New York Giants stuff to talk about. It's like the Giants are dominating.
Unfortunately, where's what's that guy's name? Mike. Is it Mike? Our guy
Michael Hahn.
Michael Hahn.
Yes. Yep, I haven't seen him pop in tonight. This is the most Giants stuff we've ever had to talk about tonight. Fill in the blank. It's blank. The Giants versus Panthers is the lone Munich, Germany game this season.
It is gross. They picked the two teams that no one care about, probably the two worst teams in the last 5 seasons of the NFL, and said, you know what? you guys go play each other over in Germany. And I thought that there was, I saw a funny tweet about this, and of course it's a joke, but they were like, basically like, oh, Germany wasn't done getting the repercussions of World War II quite yet, because now they get the Giants and Panthers. I thought that was funny.
You'd be better off sending IMG against, what was the name of that team in Ohio?
School?
Yeah, the fake school in Ohio. You'd be better off. You'd be better off with that than this. This is just ugly. You're sending the Panthers over there, and you talk about the digging up the dregs. I mean, they're going to be hoping that Tommy DeVito is the quarterback of the Giants by the time this game takes place.
All I got to say is the people over in America don't even want to watch that game. So I hope that just because of the novelty in Germany, right? Like it's like the one game they get to see a year. I hope that they sell that thing out, because I bet that there are more people paying attention in Germany than there are in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the Giants also, I mean, you talk about them grabbing some headlines this week. They unveiled their throwback uniform today. It's a 1925. I'll just go ahead and put it up here on the screen, but I need to describe it as well for the audio podcast listeners. 1925 tan pants, red, white, and blue striped socks. 1933 red jersey with the big blue section around the midsection with white numbers, and a 1938 helmet design that's basically a Michigan ripoff. But instead of being maize and blue, the helmet is blue with the winged part of the helmet that is, maize on a Michigan helmet in red. So it's up here on the screen. What do you think about these New York Giants throwbacks, the hodgepodge from all different eras that they're putting together with this?
So a couple things. First, is the NFL going to reach out to Michigan for stealing their helmet, since it's a huge deal that the Oilers, or that the University of Houston was kind of using,
right,
Oiler-esque schemes? Is the NFL going to reach out and pay Michigan compensation? Should Michigan start suing
reparations?
The NFL?
Yes.
I had to get that off my chest first and foremost. But second, I like everything of these uniforms waist up. If they didn't go with the gold pants, I think the jerseys and helmets are really solid. I have nothing bad to say about the jerseys. I think they're pretty sweet. I just hate that. Like, why did we go with the gold pants? Like, I just don't.
They're tan. They're not even gold. They're
so tan. It's like they got drunk at the end and were like, what color pants do we want? And just closed their eyes and picked one. Like, again, jerseys are sweet, and all you had to do was pick maybe like a red pant or a white pant with a red and blue stripe going down the side of it. Like, there's so many other options.
We can't have stripes because it's
tan,
like 1938 or 25 or whatever it is. Yeah. What are the pants? Yeah, 1925 pants, and then 1933 jersey and a 1938 helmet design. And obviously they were wearing leather helmets back then that didn't have face masks. I tend to agree. It's all, when you put it all together, it's a bit busy. And the fact that you have a solid color sock with stripes on the socks as well, it's all just a little bit much when you put it all together. I don't mind the helmet. Even the jersey is a little bit busy because of the extra stripes and stuff that they have in there. But the tan pants have just got to go. Just got to go. I agree. But this is like, they're not as bad as those Bumblebee uniforms. Remember that? I think it was the Pittsburgh Steelers wore a few years back. Do you remember that with all the stripes that they had?
Yes, I do remember those. At least they stuck to like two colors.
Yep. So an interesting look. The New York Giants have, I don't know when they're going to wear these. You think maybe they'll wear them on Thanksgiving when they play the C-word team?
Probably in Germany would be my guess.
You think so?
Also, for anyone that is interested, we officially that are in the Cleveland area, we officially purchased
made the ticket purchase yesterday.
Our C's versus Browns tickets yesterday. Those are locked in. So I think that's going to be a great time.
Locked and loaded, ready to go. USMA 87 was asking yesterday how much people would pay for a ticket to go see Notre Dame play at Texas A&M. And of course, Vince was out on that once, $1 came into the equation. So he couldn't believe that we were looking at over $400 a ticket to go see.
For Notre Dame and Texas A&M, I draw the line around $300.
Would
I
you?
have, how do I say this? I find it easier to spend a little bit more money on the Cowboys because I don't see the Cowboys nearly as often. And again, they're
And
professionals.
that's what I said. We only go like on average, maybe once every other year, probably once every 3 years or something.
Yeah, I'd say
like
once
that.
every 2 to 3 years is a good running average.
Yeah. I think the last time we saw him was a few years back in Indy, right?
Yeah.
Or was the Bears game after that?
No, the Bears game was after that. But even that was, I was still in graduate school, and I've been out of grad school for going on 4 years now. So we haven't been to a game in like 4 years.
You missed it. You remember the super chat that came in at the end of the show 2 days ago?
Yeah, the 50 bomb.
Yeah, we talked about that. Salty and DK had an over-under wager. The over-under was 8 times we would say the C word. And apparently we said it 16 times. But none of them came until the very end. It was, the last question, right? 16 times. I've got to think. I'd have to go back and look at the tape, but I think that you got a majority of those C's in there.
Probably. If you get me going, I could probably give you 100.
You're right about that. I don't doubt that at all. Salty says 16 plus. Apparently they stopped counting after we got to
the bet
16.
was over at that point.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Well, that's going to do it for today's show. We will be back tomorrow. DT, as of now, I think the answer is probably no to me being in College Station. I believe Brian is going to make that trip. I believe.
Hey, we gotta wrap this thing up. I got some home run bets to place.
We do. Rapid fire show coming up tomorrow. Don't forget that's a 5:00 show. Vince will be here with Jesse and I both, so we will be doing that. We will see you then. Till then, hit the like button before you leave, and we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.
And bet Brian Reynolds home run